Good morning. It's really my pleasure and honor to stand in front of you this morning and to give you this welcome speech to the Paris Space Week. I know it can look a bit unusual to have servicemen in uniform standing there for an event that is more dedicated to industry, but I think that we have some message to share this morning, and certainly there is a need for a common endeavor and a solidarity in space regarding sustainability for the future. It's an interest we all share, of course, and the way we vest this interest, of course, is different, but we have to do that all together. Why is it so? In fact, I would like to echo what I heard last week in Brussels, where I attended the EU Space Symposium. It was really a change in tone that was announced by the leaders of the EU for this occasion. And in particular, I would like to mention what the HRVP, Kaja Kallas, said. Well, in short, she said, we must be realistic about threats in space. They are there, and we must deal with them collectively. That was for the future of space. That was a strong message that she sent. And she was followed by the Commissioner for Defense and Space. And as you realize, space and defense are in the same portfolio in the Commission right now. And Rius Kubilius, in a nutshell, said we have to reorganize our industry and set up our ambition in space, and that to include defense. This is in line with what we can observe around us. Space startups are popping all across Europe. All nations are space nations. Even if they're not space-faring nations, space is everywhere in our lives. So that's why the interest is rising everywhere. I saw also in parallel a number of nations setting up their space organizations in defense, whether there are divisions in their headquarters or setting up space commands, just like France did a couple of years ago. This is important. I think it's a clear indication that space is really strategic. And again, it's just repeating what is said everywhere, but it needs engagement as well as caution for the future. If it's strategic, you need to engage frankly, but you also have to do it carefully, because if you fail, of course, it can have strategic consequences. The environment is changing very fast, and we need, in that environment, we need to be bold and imaginative. And of course, you know exactly what I have in mind when I say that. And the innovation is driven very, very strongly by some companies, but we need to follow that tendency, of course. At the same time, there are growing constraints, but also challenges because of that increase in use in space and this increase of actors in space. But there are also growing opportunities, of course, because the use of space is changing. You've got more applications, more actors, and you can see it developing for the future as well. And again, some infrastructure is currently being transferred from the Earth surface to space, and that's an opportunity for all of us, of course. In that endeavor, cooperation will be key. Of course, there is an opposition, there is a geographical logic around cooperation. Even if we are cooperating with partners all around the world, space is everywhere, and we have to think about the Pacific nations, African nations, American nations as well. But in our mind, and if you look at sovereignty, if you look at autonomy, cooperation in your continent is also something very important to consider. And for France, of course, and especially in the military, cooperation with our closest neighbors is probably the first priority, of course, and we have to set up things together to be good partners to others. And I think NATO will give you a quick speech just after me, and that's really, I guess, I don't want to steal their fire, but I guess that will be probably their main message. So we have to cooperate between European nations to be good partners for others in other parts of the world, of course. In that, the military part of innovation, of course, is not very visible. And the investment, of course, is not exactly what you would expect, of course. And especially in that change of environment, the state's investment is changing, and the innovation is more driven by the commercial sector than it was in the past. And of course, this is what we call new space. The engagement of the commercial sector, in fact, has been developed over the past few years and has completely overwhelmed the investment by states. So this has to be taken into account as well. But what I say is that space, because we need solidarity, we are all in space, whether we are military or civilians, whether it's for state purposes or commercial purposes, of course, we are all in space together. And in space, everything tends to be dual. The purely military application of space is something pretty rare. In fact, it's very limited in terms of assets in space, and everything tends to be dual. We have to take that into account, and certainly in the area of investment or in our markets, certainly the military space is not sustainable. You need to consider the commercial market to be able to develop military applications, of course. So this is all very dynamic, of course. Things are changing, and you see all the challenges that are in front of us. You'll see also all the opportunities that we have together and the connections, partnerships, cooperations that could develop, but we have to do that all together, and of course the dialogue between us is very important. There is a very quick momentum, of course, and you can, of course, we have our US friends in mind when we say that, but we can build on that momentum. 2025 in France will be a space year, certainly. It will probably be a space year in other parts of the world as well, but certainly it is in France, whether it's in Paris with the Paris Air Show here, but also the New Pace Symposium later this year. It will be also a space year in Toulouse, of course. It's a very space, it's a space city. We will inaugurate and we'll announce the initial operational capability of our Space Command in Toulouse later this year, but also the final operational capability of the NATO Center of Excellence. And there will be many events in other places as well. So stay tuned, and I wish you a very, very nice event here in Paris for this Space Week.